Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining me today out of San Francisco, where I'm here before an analyst event happening from one of major vendors in the big data space. But I thought it's about time to think a little bit about what's going on around the privacy issues, which have been all over the place with Apple versus the government, what's in general happening. So this is a highly potentially political subject. This is why it's a musings part. Musing is always my personal opinion, not what's happening with vendor and how I see things and where I might see things going. So bear that with me as you listen to me and take it with a grain of salt. So first of all, privacy is very, very important for any functioning society. We know all the stories of where privacy doesn't work. I come from Germany, luckily for me, from Western Germany. Look at the movies which were made about the Stasi, the Staatssicherheit in East Germany, how it was spying on people with very crude methods then, but indoctrinating people, telling about them that they watch TV from the West and so on. So privacy is a very, very important thing, no question about this. So let me make it very clear. And living in the 21st century with electronic means and data, we have to find a way how privacy can be maintained as, and this is a good point, if you look at the 30-minute interview of Tim Cook on ABC from Thursday or so last week, is we have much, much more information now of electronic devices. So the privacy definition and what is private, what is not private needs to evolve. But we see this in the other way. I mean, just in San Francisco, took a picture, saw a gentleman walking over the street on their phone, and I tweeted it, right? I mean, he was far away, it was barely visible. Am I allowed to tweet him walking over the street doing this or not? So there's a lot of privacy implications, and the legal realm, that's the biggest concern I have in general. We come to Apple in a second, is that the legal framework is so outdated and so old, and speaking for the US, but in generally also for Europe, which I'm being German, having lived in Europe for most of my life still, the legal framework is not advancing fast enough as technology is advancing, right? I talk a lot about next generation application, how technology evolves best practices. Well, guess what? Best practices are defined by legal frameworks. If you want to be legal, and legal frameworks, if they the playing field for best practices and technology can do more than best practices, well, probably technology is going to be out of the legal framework which is existing and running in states, and that's exactly coming to the Apple piece, the challenge here, that in the past, at least, when there would be a search warrant, let's say, an example, to a house, the officials who had that search warrant, which had to always, like in the Western world, being approved in the legal confines of a judge, there has to be cause and so on, a little different between all countries, but then everything is fair game, right? I mean, you know it from TV, right? Maybe they only do it in real world, but they tear down walls, right? And they find down stuff and so on. And if they find a safe, right, the closest way until like 50 years ago, maybe even today, if you go to bank, is to put something into a safe. And then the authorities have the right to break that safe open. They sometimes subpoena, or not subpoena is the right word, they sometimes get the help of the safe manufacturer to get in there. And to a certain point, we see that every time we check luggage with the TSA, right? The TSA has master keys of all common knowledge, of all common suitcases which are out there, and has a right to probably waited somewhere in the fine print for being sitting for a long time in a canned space with lots of people next to you and with dubious food, right? We also provide that they can search our luggage and they can take out of our luggage if they think something is not safe to take on it. Right? So here's another example where we waive our rights. So the interesting thing now is that first takeaway for everybody listening in the enterprises is, if you have mobile device in the enterprise, you better make sure that the MDM that works, because not right away in the publication was that what the phone, which is all the discussion, one of the San Bernardino terrorist killers, wasn't a worker, was employer issued phone. Now, and he turned off the iCloud backup, and we would all be in a good place regarding that phone, which we'll talk about this in a second, if the iCloud backup is still running, right? But if I have mobile device management, if I have employer-paid devices, I have a liability, not only from a security perspective, but even from a harassment perspective. If you look to cutting my HR head on here, Nova Scotia and Canada and many other areas are looking at bullying laws. So you can't do cyberbullying on other people. And if it's a company-issued device and property, you have to monitor that and be able to turn it off when bad usage of that device can happen, could happen, right? So same case here, somebody in the San Bernardino County is paying for their phone, but also paid for the MDM software probably on it because they were able, as we learned later, and Apple has a beef with that. We'll talk about this in a second. Reset passwords, but also make sure that the device is backed up and the backup can't be turned off for, in general, business continuity and business productivity reasons. Because when a phone breaks and doesn't work, I had a scenario just right now. I'm not going to disclose the vendor right now. I had to walk to the AT&T store, and luckily they found a way how to fix it. Who knew? It's not like 10 plus seconds to reset the device, but exactly 32 seconds. Well, maybe you find a tweet from me later which device it is. The teaser here. But back to San Bernardino. And the phone in question, you must back up your device. You must run your device, be able to back up the device for continuity. Now, the challenge is, of course, that, and this is interesting, if you look to Tim Cook in this video, he would be totally fine if the device would be still backing up to iCloud. Apple has handed over all the information of that concerned phone through the iCloud. So it's not really, in my view, a concern around privacy, because this could be privacy too, right? If that terrorist would be still alive, he could claim free speech rights, similar like Apple is now using free speech for potentially software and saying this phone is potentially making him look more guilty than it should, and could he retain it for as an evidence, right? I'm sure his lawyers would try to do that, right? But no problems from Tim Cook on that side. If that phone, they would not have reset, it was an advice actually from Apple to the FBI and law enforcement, if they wouldn't have reset through the MDM software, the password, then that phone would have connected to the known networks, gone to the iCloud backup, and that would have been readily handed over. Right? So that's the other part to learn from it. But I think the logic in this is we live in a democracy, and there's three different ways, as we know from the Greeks, how the people rule, with three different separations of powers. Right? We have the executive, we have the legislative, right? We have the judicative process. And the problem for anybody doing business or living in a democracy or in a regular legal form is that when you step out of the confines of a known legal framework, then and people don't like that, they drag you to the courts. And the judiciary applies the laws to the extent how it could be used for that. And that's exactly the problem we see in the Apple case right now, where Apple has created a way to delete data on the device, which or destroy the device if you have too many PIN pass numbers on that. And I think personally, companies should be free to build what they want, unless it doesn't declare law. So this means they can build also something that's very important for innovation, which is not in the legal framework, and the legal framework needs to catch up. So I'm siding on this with Tim Cook, saying this should be a process done solved by the legislative and figuring out what access to phones can be given. So once you created it, it's too late, right? I mean, if everybody could say, hey, legislative process, please change, or please rethink, please come up to date with the 21st century because I'm having trouble because the judge is saying something I don't want to do. That's, of course, not a scale process for democracy. But speaking about scalability, on the flip side, I can understand that Apple doesn't want to build any kind of software for anyone because this is highly sensitive stuff. I mean, I guess there's not thousands of Apple engineers, and Apple has thousands who can do this. There's a number of a dozen or so highly sought after individuals, and they would take some time. Ironically, Apple claimed at some point, as I read, that they couldn't build it at all. Now they can build it, of course. So all software companies, and this is why I think there's interest from Microsoft, Google, Facebook, and so on, supposedly filing amicus briefs with the court, which I haven't heard yet if they've done that, because no software company can say, hey, we're going to help law enforcement in general to work on things and help you with that. Talking about this, we know that Apple has done a lot of things to be compliant and work with China. And some critics are saying, well, maybe Apple has done more to help China than help the US. Forget the national aspects aside. I think in general, enterprises have to work in the legal framework. That's exactly what Tim Cook also said. So if they had to do something and they decided to do business in China and they opted on certain things, the question is only if I'm so caring for privacy as Tim Cook saying as Apple is doing, then I should be very careful. Now, putting on my software developer hat, there's an ironical circumstance happening right now for some users of iOS devices, which is Error 53. Let me quickly explain what Error 53 was about. Apple introduced a fingerprint sensor to allow things like Apple Pay and access to the phone and unlock the phone and so on. And obviously tapering with that could take the fingerprint off that user, put it on a different device, different people could pose as different people. So it's a sensitive area. So if you had your phone repaired by a not authorized Apple store and then upgraded to Apple iOS 9.21, I believe, your phone would be locked and your data would be gone and you couldn't restore it anymore. Basically, it was gone. Apple said that's a security feature that's very important for the privacy. They reverted that position, luckily. It didn't make any sense. Lots of public outrage, people saying I was in a country, was famous a journalist, photo reporter who was in Macedonia, had his phone report, there's no Apple stores in Macedonia. So luckily Apple changed that position, kudos to them, saying it was a mistake. And what happens now is with the correct fix, the phone is not locked, but the fingerprint sensor is not working, which makes sense. Right? You tape it with it, you can't use it anymore. It's a security privacy issue potentially. However, on the software technical side, to do that upgrade, you need to upgrade the firmware. And that's exactly what technically the FBI or the government or the judge wants Apple to do, so upgrade the firmware. Now, the rumors are that Apple is trying to take away the possibility for them to upgrade the firmware, which, just being for getting privacy on a side phone as a former software engineer, would be very, very worried, because you can be about one thing is sure about software, that you do bugs. And if you take away the capability to fix them in this fight where things are getting potentially very entrenched, I think the user, the consumer of Apple products, which I'm one of them too, I use an iPad first thing of the day and last thing of the day, most likely, will be the loser. So I think there has to be the right balance between the two. I think Apple is right to point at the legislative to figure that out. Apple is right at pointing at the executive to say you could have suggested some laws around this. But now, as you say in German, the kid is in the water. You can't debate about how to saving it. So we'll see what the appeal process, which is likely is going to go to, will yield. But an interesting thing to look on the privacy side in general. But bottom line, back to that, is if you build something out of the legal framework, you have to be ready that the courts will debate that if the legal framework hasn't been adjusted to what you've been built. And we'll see how this goes on. So thanks for watching, much longer, with some comments on the side. We appreciate it. Thanks.